Hello explorers and welcome to another video. Today we are going to talk about backups. So a backup strategy, that a wise man once said, should be in a 3-2-1 phase. You should have 3 copies of your data, the production included, in 2 different formats, and 1 should be off-site. So what does that mean? In this case, you should copy your production data into 2 different other places. One of those should be on hard drives, for instance, and another one on tape. And one of those should be off-site, which means not close to your production data in this case. So, for instance, in another region or something like that. So that's very important because when you lose data, let's say that you lost 15 years of data that was very important to you, then you would probably be furious, or a lot of people would be furious, and you could even get fired for that offense. And if you lose that amount of data and you later on figure out that you lost that data and you don't have any backups because of a technicality, then you would be even more furious. So backups are important. If you haven't looked at your backup recently and tried to restore it to see that it actually works, then please pause the video and go check out your backups. It's extremely important. So now that I've given you that advice and helped you out in that way, if you want to help this channel, there are affiliate links and donor links in the description if you want to help me out. So what I'm going to look at today is Bacula. This is an interface in order to back up things. I've tried a bunch of different things. I looked into Amanda, I looked into Bear OS, and I also looked into a third one, UR Backup. And all of those are good in different ways, but they are not complete. They are not having all the features that I need. Bacula, on the other hand, is open source. It has a community edition and the code is available. You could do pull requests against it, but it is a company that drives it, and there is a lot of large companies that are using it in a commercial enterprise sense. So that means that it has a lot of functionality. So let's switch over to my screen here and we will look at the interface. This is a test setup that I did where you can see all the bells and whistles. You have the backup jobs that have been running. You have a little pie diagram here on how well they have been doing. We see that I have some errors here. I did a Ceph backup. I haven't figured out how that actually works to back up to a Ceph pool, so that errored for me. Otherwise, it has backed up with a schedule. And I also had a couple that I had to cancel because I hadn't set it up correctly yet. So you could get a great overview. How is the status of my systems at the moment? Do I have backups? Are they working? Are they actually available? The system as well has a bunch of different concepts for the backup because there is a lot of it involved here. So first off, they have this kind of file daemon, something that you are running on everything that you want to back up. Every client that you want to back up has a file daemon that handles the actual packaging and sending off what you want to back up. So that's one part. Then you have a storage daemon that figures out how to store your data on your backup media. And in the middle, you have the director that figures out when should I do backups and when should I put those 2 other services together so they will actually do the backup. So the files and so on are sent directly from the file daemon to the storage daemon, but the director is in the middle there and telling the file daemon to send the data over to the storage daemon. The storage daemon comes back to the director and says, I have stored your media. So those are the 3 different services that you need to set up. I will go through how to set them up, or at least how I set them up. There are different ways to set this up as well, but I will walk you through that later on. So when it comes to the different things here, we have the jobs. Those are what actually ran. Then we have a schedule, and that is something that you can set up. And I don't really like the interface here. There is a way to get to everything, but the interface, the web interface, there are multiple web interfaces. So Bacula is a really good way to do backups, but the web interfaces, I have tried 3 different of them, are not really perfect for this solution. There could be improvements, a lot of improvements on the web interfaces. But if we look at the schedule here, we have something called a weekly cycle. And the weekly cycle is set up in a way that you have one run where you do a monthly backup at 23:05, and you do it the first week of every month on a Sunday. So that tells you when you should do the big backup run here, and it should be a full backup. So every month you have a full backup. Then you have something that is running on a Sunday every 2nd, 3rd, and 4th and 5th of the month. So every other week of the month you run something on the Sunday, and this should be a differential. So that should be a difference between the full backup and the part where you are at the moment. And then last but not least, you have the daily backups that runs on other days than Sunday. That is an incremental backup. So those are looking at the previous backup and doing an incremental backup of that backup. So that is a backup strategy that they have set up as an example, and I think it's pretty nice. It's a pretty good way of doing backups. Another thing that they have looked into is that you can run things before the backup and after the backup in order, for instance, to back up a database. So you can do a backup database dump, then you can back up that, and then can read that backup back. So the clients are what we want to update or want to back up. You have a bunch of different clients. So who do I want to back up? Then we have the file set. The file set is what directories do we want to back up. Here we have the catalog. This is the local database of this system. So that is backed up, of course. Then you have the home directory, which is something that I set up. And it's a pretty simple file set. Just take the home directory of any server and back that up. So that's what I've set up on my clients. And then if we look at the job, which puts it all together, and we look at the Bacula client home backup schedule here. So this is a backup of the level full of this client, file set home, and then we back that up to this particular file on disk, and it should use this weekly cycle. And the messaging, if something goes wrong, should be the normal messaging. So it will send emails if anything goes wrong and so on. So you can set up a lot of different ways of sending messages as well if something goes wrong. So that is the setup for the backup. When it comes to the storage, that is also a little bit convoluted, a really strange way of doing it. So if we look at the storage, we have file 1, 2, and Ceph. So one pool that I can store stuff to. So you send things to pools. So we look at the pools. We have a file pool, a default pool, and a scratch pool. And the pool, you say, how long do I want to keep the things? So 365 days should the pool keep data. You should keep it in up to 100 volumes. And that is just file chunks. In this case, they are 50 gigabytes large. So it will write a volume and then will write the next volume and the next and so on. It will do auto pruning and recycling volumes. So it will remove data that is too old and then renew volumes that are old. And the way that they're doing this is that they store it to a particular thing, in this case file. And if we look at file, this will store to a file changer. That is the device. What is the file changer then? Well, this is a way to write backups to something that could say, I first write it there, and then I write it there, and then I write it there. And there are hardware stuff that could write to tape. So we have a tape changer that writes to one tape, and then when it's full, it will switch over to the next tape and write to that tape. So you have built in this functionality of having auto changer that could handle that kind of changing tapes. And there are a bunch of those that are available in the system. So you will have a backup to a particular device and a file changer that handles that device. And you can also go in and say that this particular device, the storage media, is this tape, and you can set what the particular name of that tape should be. So you can actually assign the tape a particular number and say that this particular barcode should be this tape. And the important part there is that it stores that in a database and tells you, okay, if you want to restore this data, go to your tape archive, fetch that tape with that barcode and put that into the system in order to do the backup. So you understand that the database is extremely important to have in order to fetch your data, because if you don't know where things is, you can't restore them, of course. So that's the auto changer that handles that very important task. And then we have the volumes. This is where you write the data. So currently we see here that I have a bunch of read-only ones because I had the wrong permissions on my file system. But at least it's writing to volume 5 here, so I can see that that is actually written to. And the restore procedure, you have it built in here. I want to restore Bacula client 1. I can tell it to take a particular backup here. I can take that incremental. And then I can select particular files that I want to back up. So I want to back up the whole home directory. Where I could put it in the temp directory of the storage. Options, do not replace files, for instance. And then I can go to the last page here and just run. And then you will get your data back, which is extremely important that you can do. And you should test this. I can't stress that enough. So that was pretty much a small walkthrough of this interface and what you can do. So what I would say is that the setup, which is mostly done with configuration files. You have one configuration file for the client. So you have a client locally on your drive that you can do some configuration for. Then you have a configuration for the file daemon, the storage daemon, and the director. And those are pretty simple to understand and change. The web interface can change them automatically for you, but how to actually do configuration changes here without breaking something is a little bit more complicated. So I will not go through that in this video, but I will look at how to actually install this next. So now let's look into the installation process here. First off, I created this little extra drive here that I call backup. It's just the 20 gigabytes of mounted space, so you can back up some stuff to it. So that's a little preparation I did. And I also added a password and username that we will use later on. I will talk about it, but of course I will not show you my details. So first off, we want to install a couple of things so we can actually add things to our repository and also fetch files. So we will install the apt transport, HTTPS, and vget. And we will also do an update of our registry so we have all those things. So this is a Debian bookworm install with no extra packages, just SSH and so on, so I can log into it, but nothing extra. Then we want to fetch the Bacula distribution key. So this can be downloaded in order to get your packages. I will download that. And we will also use the apt key to add this file to our repository so we can actually use that on our system. Now we can remove that file. It's not something that we need anymore. Then I want to add the Bacula repository. And on the Bacula site, you can register and get the Bacula key that you can use in your path in order to log in. They describe exactly how to do it. But because I have downloaded it so many times, they have set a limit, so I can actually not download it anymore. So I've done a caching on it, can do that. So I'm using my own Nexus repository in order to fetch the binaries or the things here. So I will add that to my Bacula list. So this is my local repository. And in order for that to work, because I don't have HTTPS, I will touch this peer file here, and I will echo in that I don't want to verify the peer. But that is not something that you need to do. That is for me. I need that in order to do this demo. Then I do an apt update, and I should be able to fetch those packages from this repository. Next up, I will install MariaDB server and client. So if you install Bacula without MariaDB, you will get a Postgres database. I'm more familiar with MariaDB and MySQL, so that's why I'm installing that and using that instead for Bacula. You can also use this Bacularis, which is the web interface, and install that, and then install everything from that interface and make the distribution handling from the web interface. But if you do that, again, you will use the Postgres database, and I want to use MariaDB. So I will install that here. It could take a little while here to install it, so I will be back when that is done. So there, that was done. Now we can install Bacula. So I will install 3 packages. We will install the MySQL Bacula version. We will install Bacula Aligned for extra features, and we will also install Bacula Cloud Storage S3. Currently, I haven't gotten that S3 to a cesspool or Amazon to work. But of course, if you want to have that kind of storage behavior, you need to install those packages. I'm not sure if that is an enterprise feature that you actually need to buy the software in order to use, but I will install it anyways. I have it, and I will play around with it. If I get it to work, there might be a video about it later, but currently I just install it so I have it there. So now we ended up at this place here where we can configure a database, and of course I want to configure that. You can give the MySQL application for Bacula MySQL a password. You should give it a good password here. I won't because this is just a demo, but you should enter a good password there, of course. So it will just finish off by adding the different services here. So you have the file daemon, the storage daemon, and the director. They'll put those into the systemd interface, so it actually starts on boot, which is very important. So now everything is installed. Next up, we will install Bacularis. So first off, we will fetch that key. So we will go to get packages, Bacularis app, Bacularis pub, and we will de-armor that and then put that into our key rings. So we have that key. Next up, this step I will not run. So here you have something that you could add a machine username and password for APT. I haven't never seen this before, but this is a requirement. And of course you need your own login and password here. So I will not run that because I've already run that and created that file. So I have a username and password on this machine. Next up, we will create the repository here. So we will echo deb signed by the public key here into our APT as an extra list here, Bacularis app list. And we will take the packages Bacularis app, stable, Debian, bookworm main, and we will put those into there. So now we have another repository available, so we can do apt update. So we have all those packages available to us. And next up, Bacularis is running in the Feather web service. So we will install that and PHP, a very, very good web server that we can use. And Bacularis is a PHP application. I think they had the requirement of PHP 7.0 and later in order to run this. So 8.2 should be just fine for this. So now that all of those packages are installed, we need to do some extra changes here. We first off need to add some modules. The proxy FCGI, the set mvif, and rewrite. So we'll enable those. And we will also enable the site Bacularis. And then we will restart the web server, so we have that running. Now we want to give permissions to Bacula for the different resources. So we will add the www data, which is used by the web server, into the Bacula group. So it has access to those things. We want to set the permissions on the etc directory so it can actually go there with the group. And we also want to change the permissions on the different configurations files for Bacula to 660. And the reason we do that is so it can actually write and change those files. But we want to have more permissions on the FD server, so we will set that to root and Bacula as a user group. And the same goes for the Bacula console. So we will change those to the correct ones. And also we will change the permissions of this backup directory, because the daemon, the storage daemon, is using Bacula or Bacula as a user in order to store your backups. So of course the backup location needs to have that user. So now we have set up all the different ways we back up stuff. We also need to do some changes to the different configuration files. So let's look at the Bacula dir director. So in here we can see that we have a query script for this particular database. We have a working directory where it will do all the different store all its files when it is working. We have a PID directory. I'm not sure why they haven't put that into the run directory of the server. That would be more reasonable for services to have their PIDs in there. But I guess this is a different PID directory, not for the services, but for the different jobs that are running. And of course, if you restart a service, you want the service to know that a particular job is currently running and not run that again, for instance. Maybe cancel it or something like that. We set a maximum of current jobs that could be running at one time. So this could be changed if you have a very busy server. Then we have the password for the console. So if you want to do some changes from the console interface, then you will use that password. And the messaging for the director should be daemon. We have a job default here for setting up jobs. So if you're using this default job, you will do backups incremental for this particular client, full set, weekly, the weekly cycle, to file, standard messaging, pool file, and then where you should write the bootstrap and so on. We have a couple of jobs already defined here that we could use. You have one for the backup client, which is the default job. We also have this backup catalog, which is backing up the current catalog MySQL database. So it will go through here and do a full level backup in a weekly after backup cycle. And it will run this job before in order to extract an SQL file to your working directory. And then you have another script to remove that. And that is what you actually are backing up later on. And then we have also this restore script for restoring files that it has set up. The full set here is one of the file sets, and it's just the bin directory of Bacula. I'm not sure why you want to back that up, but we should exclude a bunch of stuff here. The weekly schedule, so you can set up schedules in the file here. I think using the web interface to set them up is probably simpler. Then we have the file set for the particular SQL file that we see here, the catalog. This is the Bacula SQL. And we have the client set up here. So the Bacula FD is one of the clients. and it has a password, my catalog, and file retention, job retention, and so on. And it should be auto pruning. You could have more clients, of course, but I will not have it on the same machine. We have the auto changer configured here, and there are 2 auto changers configured by default, and then we have the catalog. So this is my SQL password. This is something that I want to keep because I will need that during the installation later on. And then we have the messages. So this is where you set up how to actually send emails when things goes wrong. Extremely important to update. And also what log file to append to. So if you want to find any errors, you can look at this log file down here. And then we have this daemon one, which is also to this log file, but it's a different setup. Not used by jobs. And then we have the pool set up here. So here we have the maximum volume size and 100 volumes. So this is the setup how to create these different volumes. We have another pool here for backup. So we have one, let's see, default pool, file pool, and then we have a scratch pool. And last but not least, we have the console configuration down here with the password and so on. Next up, we can look at the file daemon. And the important part here is the director should be the same as the director that wants to connect to your file daemon. In this case, it's the Bacula. And then we have the password for this file daemon. So when the director connects to the file daemon, it's this password it will use, and the same goes for the storage daemon. Then you have a different one here that is just for monitoring. So if you want to have the tray monitoring here, it will only get information, not actually be able to do any changes. And then we have the file daemon set up here, where a working directory and so on, and the plugin directory. So this is, and also messaging down here. So this is the setup for where it should, which resources it should use, and so on. Last but not least, we look at the storage daemon. So this is where things is stored, and we also have this Bacula here. We have the monitor, pretty much very similar to the file daemon in setup, but here we see the auto changer setup, which devices it should use. And then we have the different devices for the daemon, and you see here that we have a directory called opt Bacula archive as a device directory. This could be just a device in dev/something that you have as your storage device, but when you're doing a file backup, this should be a directory. So here I will use the backup directory that we created with this 20 gigabyte storage. So I can store my file there. So I will do that for device 1 and 2. And then we have the second auto changer with the same kind of placement here. So I will do the same thing here. So I get all the backups in the same place. Backup. There we go. And then we have more configurations if we want to look into different machines. So here we have for the Solaris LTO3 taped drive, for instance. So they have a couple of examples later down here. And last but not least, we have the messaging. So going through and setting these configuration files up is a good practice. You could do some changes in the web interface, but it's harder to understand in the web interface because they have so many ways of doing the same thing and it's not consistent. So I'm not really liking the web interface from that standpoint, but getting data and seeing what's going on, it's very good at. So I think we have done all the setup we need for the Bacula interface here. So let's switch over to this screen here. I will take the new IP of 7 instead, and then we go there. And the login and password for the first login is admin. And then we will get this wizard that we can do installation. So we will install the API and the web interface. Both of them are required. The web will talk to the API and so on. Then we see here do you already have the Bacula installed? So I said that Bacularis could install them for you and you will get the Postgres install. But if you already have installed them, then you answer yes here. Then it will ask you about the database. I say I have a MySQL database. The login is Bacula with the password I got earlier, and it's localhost. We will test that. It works just fine. Then we have the console. So if we want to set up things and so on, it needs to connect to this console or use this console file or this console application. And we want to change this up because it's actually in /opt and /Bacula /bin, but per default. And the configuration we saw earlier is in opt Bacula etc bconf. So if we test that, we get an issue because we can't do sudo. So we will take this configuration we have here and we'll create a new file. So let's switch over here. We will sudo edit the sudoers directory, and here we can have Bacularis, and that in that file we will paste that. So I will store that. We will have more to paste there later, but if we test again, we will have an OK there. So the next configuration is for all the other things that we want to run, and those are all in the opt Bacula bin, and they have a default here for the binaries. So we change that up, it will change that up. The Baculum or Bacularis working directory is in the web interface here, so we will not need to change that. But all the others here down here, the bdir.json, bsd.json, and so on, all of those are in that binary folder. And of course, if we test this, we will get the same issue as earlier with sudo. So we go into sudo and we'll copy paste this thing as well into this file that we had earlier. So we give permissions for the web interface to run those as well. So if we go back here, close this window and run the test again, everything should be okay. Next up, we had the admin and user password. So I will just have admin again. So it will not change that password for my case. And then we have everything set up and can save it, log in with admin, and we have our Bacularis up and running. Of course, we want to have more clients. Currently, the only client we have is the local host client, which is not that interesting. So we want to add another client here. And the name of this, I set to backup client 1, for instance. And this should have an address. So let's look at my backup client 1 here. Let's do an IP on that. So we will have, this is 184. So let's take that, put that in here as an address. The password, that's something that we need to look up, and it should be in my catalog. So let's go back here. And on this client, I also need to go into the etc hosts, because default it's using the Bacula interface in order to go to this, and now it's on 87, so I need to have the right name for this service. So if it's Bacula, it needs to find it on that IP. So I need to change up with where this client thinks Bacula is. And if we go into the opt Bacula etc Bacula fd conf, here we have the password, and usually the name of this is hostname-dir. So you need to change this up to be the director of the thing you want to connect with. If you don't change this name, you will get an error telling you this director has the wrong name that you want to connect with. And you see here down here you have the Bacula client mon. I haven't changed that. So you need to change that up. But other than that, you can keep the rest here, except for this messages should be also sent to the Bacula director, nowhere else. So if we go back here and I paste this in, I see that I marked something else. So let's go back here and find that password again, mark that up, and then paste it in here. So now I have the setup for this particular client, and I think everything here could be kept as default. And if I create a client, it's created successfully. and we can go into the actions over here, and we can see the status of the client. And if we set everything up, we should see the status down here. We could also do a network test. And if we have set the configuration for the storage daemon correctly, this test should work. So we should be able to store data to the storage place. And we also see how fast it goes. The test here is of 50 megabytes, so it's a very small test, but we can see at least how fast it writes data to the drive. So now we see that the backup is actually working. And now let's go into the director and create another file set as we had before. Just for funsies, we will create a small file set here. Go in, say we have the file set of home. We will add the directory, include block, and add there. And here we can say add files by the file browser. So you open that up. I can say I want to use this client, and I get a file browser. So I can see which files are actually available on this client. And then I can apply this selection here. Of course, was to include that, and I apply. So now I have that set up, and I can save this configuration. And now we see that we got an error. Permission denied for Bacula dir.conf. I wonder if that is because we changed the user group and we didn't restart the director, perhaps. Let's try that. Bacula dir restart. See if we get... Nope, still not. So let's go to this directory and see how it looks. So it's Bacula is actually the owner of the directory. We have the right permissions and everything. Let's restart the web server and see if that helps for the permissions. So doing yes. So if we restart the web server, we will get the new user and group available to us, so we can actually store this one. So now we have the home file set. Let's schedule something here. We will create a new job for the client. Let's call this Bacula client 1 home, for instance. And we want to use the have a backup. We want to have a full backup. We want to use this client. We want to use the file set of home. We want to have the pool file, and I want to store it in file 1. So there's where I want to store it. Messages, I want standard. I'm not sure if I need to put in anything more down here. There is a bunch more things that you could put in, but I don't think you need any more. So let's do that. So now I have a job here called Bacula Home. So let's see if we can run this job as well. Jobs, and go into jobs. We have the home here. Go into actions. Here I can run job. As you see, there is a little bit convoluted how you do these kind of things. So I don't really like this. You can also estimate how long a job could take to run. So here it ran a full backup of that, and we can see in our interface that it's currently running, and with a little bit of luck it will be successful. So if we go into the jobs again and look at the we can add a new job. Again, don't want to add a normal job, I want to add a backup job. Then we get this wizard, which is pretty nice. So let's see that we do a Bacula client full or something like that. And we can do a default job. So try again. What? The web interface didn't like that at all. What happened now? So you see the web interface is not really my favorite part of this. What happened now? You can see that we have nothing in our backup, so that didn't go well. Let's go into home here. We have nothing there either. But our drive is full. So is that the working directory that got full, for instance? Yeah. I think this is where all the data went. So should have backed up to backup. So we have 3.7 gigabytes in opt, probably Bacula, and in here we have everything in archive. I see. Of course, when you do things and change things up, you should restart the services. Bacula, SD, FD, director. So now that we have changed all of those, we should be able to log in again. Yay! This one failed, of course. Let's try to run that again and see if we can back it up to the right place. Start that again. And when we create a new backup job, there we were. We could create something for, let's say, client 2. We could use the defaults if we want. Here we say what. So we have Bacula client 1, home, for instance, where, into file, pool there. So you see that you have this guide that helps you out in order to set all of these things correctly. So they have added more to Baculum, which is helping you out to create these kind of jobs. But you could do it in another way, as I showed you earlier, which is very frustrating. So you have different ways of doing things. So now it have backed up 3.9 gigabytes, and we have here in the interface that we have tried to store 7.9 gigabytes. The first was, of course, failure, so that was never backed up. So can I delete it, job? Will that change the total? Let's see. Yeah, 3.9 gigabytes. This was what I wanted to cover today. I hope that you liked this video. Give it a like, share it with your friends and colleagues. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. If you have any comments or suggestions, leave those in the comment section down below. And I really hope to see you in the next video.